The ballroom of the five-star hotel in Zurich was drowning in white roses and silver candlelight, the kind of luxury that doesn't just impress you, it makes you feel like you don't belong. And tonight, Lucia Fernandez felt exactly that. She sat alone at a table near the wall, her navy dress perfectly pressed, her black heels perfectly wrong for a marble floor. Her best friend Mariana, the bride, was glowing under the flash of cameras on the other side of the room, completely unreachable. And Lucia? Lucia was trying very hard to look like a woman who chose to come alone. She didn't fool anyone. She came by herself. The whispers started early. No partner? She looks a little out of place, doesn't she? Lucia raised her wine glass to her lips, more to hide her expression than for the taste. She wasn't the kind of woman who cared about other people's opinions. Usually. But tonight, in this sea of chandeliers and curated perfection, the loneliness felt amplified into something almost unbearable. She checked her watch. 8 o'clock. Too early to leave without looking rude. She was just rising to step outside for air when a man sat down beside her, not hesitantly, not politely, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had decided the chair was his. He was tall, sharply dressed, with the kind of face that made nearby conversations die mid-sentence. He didn't look at her. He looked across the room, voice low and unhurried. "Pretend you're with me." Lucia went very still. "I'm sorry?" "They're talking about both of us," he said calmly, still not meeting her eyes. "If it doesn't bother you, let's pretend we came together." She let out a small, disbelieving laugh. "So I'm supposed to play girlfriend to a complete stranger?" He turned then, and she saw his eyes. Gray. Cold. Calculating. But somewhere inside them, something flickering that she couldn't quite name. He leaned just close enough that she caught the scent of sandalwood at his collar. "Just pretend. Trust me, you avoid those uncomfortable stares, I avoid a set-up date I have no interest in. We both win." Lucia hesitated. She looked across the room. The whispers had already shifted, from pity to curiosity. Oh. She did have someone after all. "Fine," she said, a small defiant smile on her lips. "But how far exactly are you planning to take this performance?" He raised one eyebrow and said, simply, "Leave that to me." He draped his arm across the back of her chair with such effortless intimacy that half the table looked away smiling. Lucia tensed immediately. This man, she thought, knows far too well how to play a role. "What's your name?" she asked quietly. "Alejandro Morel." The name hit her like cold water. She swallowed hard. Alejandro Morel, the youngest CEO in Swiss finance. Famous for his ruthlessness. Famous for leaving wreckage wherever he went. "I am fake dating Alejandro Morel," she thought wildly. He poured her more wine as though they'd been together for years. "Relax," he said. "Lucia Fernandez," she offered, almost as a reflex. "I know," he said simply, his eyes finding hers. "I have a good memory for faces worth remembering." She looked away before he could see the heat rise in her cheeks. 3 days later, a black car pulled up outside her newsroom. The window rolled down. Alejandro Morel. "If you're not busy," he said, "I need 5 minutes." She climbed in, half laughing. The leather interior smelled expensive. Her worn shoes looked out of place on his floor mat. He was direct, as she was learning he always was. "The press and certain investors are applying pressure. They believe something is wrong with me because I have no family, no partner. My shares don't depend on that, but the rumors are becoming intolerable. At the wedding, you played the role perfectly. I need someone intelligent. Someone who won't collapse under scrutiny." Lucia stared at him. "So instead of telling me I'm beautiful, you tell me I'm a good actress?" "Both are true," he said flatly. She was quiet for a moment. She should say no. She had no time for this. But something else was circling in her mind. She had been investigating a financial scandal for months. The kind that lived in closed rooms and private galas. The exact rooms this man could open for her. "How do you plan to compensate me for this role?" she asked. "Respect. Discretion. Mutual convenience. I'm not that cheap, Morel. I want the right to walk away when I'm done." A rare, quiet laugh escaped him, like ice cracking in sunlight. "Done. And I reserve the right to end it if you become a public relations disaster." "The only disaster here," she replied, "is that suit of yours making everyone else in the room feel inadequate." Something warm crossed his face. Not quite a smile. Almost. She extended her hand. "Temporary arrangement." He shook it, firm, warm, certain. "Just pretend, Fernandez." "Just pretend," she repeated silently. Though something in her chest was already whispering that this was going to be far more dangerous than it looked. The galas came one after another, Zurich, Geneva, Lausanne. And each time, Lucia watched and listened while playing her role perfectly. She catalogued names, memorized numbers overheard near buffet tables, photographed donor lists on her phone when Alejandro stepped away. She was close to something. She could feel it. But she was also close to something else she hadn't planned for. One evening at a museum gala, Alejandro paused in front of a painting, deep ocean blue, vast and quiet. When he spoke, his voice had dropped half a register. "My mother loved this color." She said it reminded her of the sea where she grew up. Lucia looked at him. The cold mask was gone. What was left was a man holding an old grief gently, like something fragile. "I didn't think you'd talk about your family," she said softly. "Neither did I," he murmured. "Not tonight." That was the moment the line between playing a role and feeling something real began to blur. Later, in a small cafe near the plaza, no crystal glasses, no cameras, just warm light and the smell of fresh coffee, she laughed at something he said and he laughed back, quietly, like someone surprised to discover they still could. "I never thought I'd see Alejandro Morel in a regular cafe," she teased. "Don't say it too loudly," he replied. "I have a reputation to ruin." And then, one night after a private birthday party, walking down stone steps lit by lamplight, slightly loosened by whiskey and laughter, he stopped. Looked at her. And kissed her. It was brief. It was real. It tasted like everything she had been pretending wasn't happening. When he pulled back, he was still close enough that she could feel his breath. "Are you out of your mind?" she whispered. "Possibly," he said, with that half-smile that had been quietly dismantling her for weeks. "But there are moments when I don't want to pretend anymore." She pressed her fingers to her lips on the ride home, her heart at war with itself. Because she had also just found the name she'd been looking for, CB Holdings. Offshore transfers. Shell companies. And the owner listed at the top of the file, the Morel Group. The document sat on her screen for 3 days before she could bring herself to look at it again. Her colleague confirmed it, the final signature on the operations, it matches Alejandro Morel. 70% certainty. Unverified. Her editor was less patient. "You have the signature, Lucia. What are you waiting for? It's not confirmed yet." He slammed his hand on the desk. 1 week. Either you write it, or Roberts gets it. Roberts, who would turn Alejandro into a monster in 2 days and never lose a night's sleep over it. "I'll write it," she said. "It'll be mine." But she went home that night and opened a blank document and couldn't type a single word. She looked at the engraved pen Alejandro had given her, sitting on her desk. She thought about his voice in the concert hall, talking about his mother's music. She thought about his hands, steadying her every time she stumbled. What if he's innocent? What if he's not? She couldn't answer. So she messaged him instead. "I need to see you. Alone." His reply came in seconds. "Tomorrow. My office." But he came to her door before she ever got the chance. She opened it to find him filling the frame, tall, immaculate, and furious in a way she had never seen before. Not the cold fury of a businessman. Something raw. "You came close to me because of a story," he said. Not a question. "Yes," she said, because she owed him the truth. "In the beginning, yes. But then, I told you things I've never said to anyone." His voice cracked at the edges. "I trusted you. I know. And I'm sorry. But Alejandro, I have a signature, documents pointing to your company, and I can't ignore. You think I'm a criminal. I don't know what to think. And that's exactly what's tearing me apart." The silence between them was brutal. "We're done," he said. And he left. The door closed like a gunshot. Lucia sat down slowly, hands trembling. She could walk away from the story. Delete everything. But her conscience would not let her be silent, not if people were being robbed. And if he was innocent, the only thing that could save him was the truth. So she kept digging. And 3 nights later, hunched over her laptop in a near-empty cafe, she found it. An anonymous message. Attached documents. Transfer records, contracts, forged signatures, all pointing not to Alejandro, but to his vice president. Ernesto Vidal. Alejandro hadn't signed anything. His signature had been copied, altered, used without his knowledge. He had been betrayed by the man he trusted most. She was still reading when she stepped outside, and 2 men blocked her path under the streetlights. One of them smiled in a way that had nothing to do with kindness. "Mr. Vidal says you should stop digging. You wouldn't want to disappear." She backed against the wall. The glint of metal caught the lamplight. Then, headlights. An engine. A car door thrown open. Alejandro stepped out. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Touch her," he said quietly, "and see what happens." The men looked at each other. And melted back into the dark. Lucia's legs were shaking. "How did you know where I was?" "I never fully stopped watching out for you," he said, his voice still cold. "Don't thank me. I couldn't live with your blood on my hands." That's all. It wasn't all. She knew it. He knew it. But he got back in the car. She stood alone under the lamp, tears running quietly down her face. I'm going to clear your name, she whispered to the empty street. Even if you never want to see me again. The article went live the next morning. Every major outlet picked it up by noon. The real architect of the Morel scandal, Ernesto Vidal. She laid out everything, the offshore accounts, the falsified signatures, the internal betrayal. She made it bulletproof. She made it undeniable. By afternoon, Vidal's lawyers were already calling the papers. By evening, the police were at his door. But Vidal didn't go quietly. When she left the newsroom that night, a cloth soaked in something chemical was pressed over her mouth, and the world went dark. She woke in a warehouse. Rust. Silence. And Ernesto Vidal standing in front of her with a knife that caught the light in a way that made her stomach drop. You've become an inconvenience, Miss Fernandez, he said pleasantly. The truth doesn't disappear because I do, she said, though her voice shook. He stepped closer, and the door exploded open. Alejandro came through first. Let her go, Ernesto. Vidal pressed the blade to her neck. One more step and she's gone. Every muscle in Alejandro's body was rigid. His eyes found Lucia's across the room, and for just a moment, every wall was down. Every pretense. Every armor. Ernesto. His voice softened, barely. You can still surrender. Don't do this. Everything I built for you. Vidal's voice broke at the edges. And you handed me to the police. You handed yourself to them, Alejandro said. The moment you betrayed me. 1 second of hesitation. That was all it took. Alejandro moved. The knife grazed her arm. A shot rang out. Officers poured in. And then his arms were around her, tight, desperate, nothing like the composed executive who had once draped his arm across her chair so casually. Stay with me. Don't close your eyes. Do you hear me? She heard him. She stayed. In the hospital room, quiet and white, he held her hand with both of his. His shirt had blood on it. His eyes were red. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I should have believed you. I left you alone. Forgive me. She opened her eyes slowly. You came back. I'm not leaving again. The tears came then, hers, and almost his. I didn't want to fall in love with you, she said. I tried not to. But I did. He pressed his forehead to her hand. From the moment you nearly fell on the red carpet in those heels, he said softly, I knew my life was no longer entirely mine. I was just too proud to admit it. She laughed, weakly. The great Alejandro Morel, brought down by a pair of heels. No, he said, finally letting the smile reach his eyes. By you. No more pretending, she whispered. No, he said. Never again. They were married in the garden of his family's residence in Lausanne. No 500-guest spectacle. No performance. Just roses, warm light, and the people who mattered. At the altar, she looked at him, and the man she saw was not the one the world feared. He was the man who had peeled an apple badly in a hospital room. The man who discovered street gelato at 40 and smiled like a boy. The man who left notes on her desk that simply read, I'm proud of you. I pretended in the beginning, she told him, her voice steady. But I soon realized it wasn't a role anymore. I promised to stay beside you, in the light and in the dark. And I promised to wear better shoes. The guests laughed. His eyes glistened. I thought perfection was the only armor I had, he said. You showed me that the most perfect thing I could do was simply be honest. I promise to always believe you. Even when the world doesn't. The kiss was quiet. Real. Everything the first one had only hinted at. Later that night, on the dock by the lake, the water holding the reflection of a sky full of stars, she leaned her head against his shoulder. Do you remember what you said to me the night it all started? She murmured. Pretend you're with me, he said. She smiled. And look where the most honest lie took us. He pulled her close. I don't want to pretend anything ever again, he said. Then don't, she told him. And under the stars above Zurich, with no cameras and no audience and no performance left to give, they simply stayed there, together, and let it be real.